All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Move your mic up a hair. Ask it. The I have to start recording. It turns out. Yeah. All right. Eventually, we're together. All right. So, hunting, fishing. It's just not going to work in the apocalypse. Any type of real shit hits the fan kind of situation, it turns out that's everyone's kind of go-to backup plan.
Yeah,
And even if you haven't given it any thought, it's gonna be your thought because how
I
else do you
can't tell
get
you how
food?
many people said that, oh, if things go bad, I know how to hunt. Yeah, a lot of people know how to hunt. And a lot of people don't know how to hunt, but also have a gun. And there's not going to be any seasons. There's not going to be any sort of, you know, time to repopulate. There's nothing like that. People are just going to shoot whatever they see, whether it's a 8-pointer or a 2-pointer. They're going to shoot anything that they can eat.
Yeah, I
And
mean, honestly, even little babies are,
mhm,
worth taking when your babies are starving.
right, right. It's it's real easy. Everybody thinks it's real easy to go out and bag a deer. And the truth of the matter is, if you dump a bunch of corn in your backyard and sit around and wait, eventually you might get something. But it's not going to be like hunting is now with with everybody doing the appropriate thing and hunting at the right time with their tags and all that sort of stuff. It's not going to be the same thing.
Right. And that's the thing, like people end up having to go farther and farther into the woods or different things to, end up find things. But I would say if that is your best play, the trick would be uh to start with the things that, I mean, obviously you take any deer or anything you can get, but don't be too critical where, hey, I'll shoot that raccoon. Hey, I'll shoot that squirrel. Hey,
Mhm.
I'm gonna start with squirrels. Squirrels are gonna be around for a little bit,
Yep.
a week or two longer, right?
Hmm.
Um, Rabbits, they do reproduce on the regular, so they might be a good go-to.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. There's a
Um,
lot of smaller game that you might hunt with 22, but ultimately ultimately you're gonna run out of opportunities.
yeah,
Everybody around you in your whole area is gonna be out doing the same thing you're doing. So you got to be conscientious that that might not be a viable option if things really go downhill.
exactly. So, anyway, I wanted to talk about some alternatives, things that we could be doing to, you know, to go and successfully feed our families, right? That's a big part of being prepared and what we're all looking for. Um, the uh, the bottom line is you need to think about farming, gardening, right? Um,
Right.
these are the kind of things you can implement early. You need to start setting up fencing and setting up fields, learning about your soil, learning about how to get things to grow because it's different everywhere and for everybody. We've talked in the past, it's not as easy as throwing some seeds on the ground. Now, some things do, some things take, but
Hmm. Some
other
things are
things
that
don't.
easy. Yeah.
But and hey, maybe the upside to the deer being over harvested and the rabbits being over harvested is maybe they'll leave your plants and things you're growing alone a little bit. So
And now
that'll
all I
be
got
an
to do
upside.
is come up with some recipes for woodchuck. Uh,
Oh, that doesn't sound good. I
I've
have
heard
heard
people say it was good, but I'll never know.
I've heard that the secret of the pros is if you do a lot of deer meat is to mix in some possum, and
Oh
it
yeah.
it basically adds the fat and the oil that you're looking for when you get with the leaner meat. That's the secret of the pros. So you can make like meatloaf or burger or something,
Hmm.
and have it actually stick together a little bit, a little more fatty, right? Um, that's a trick. Uh, you guys know I'm always mentioning rabbits, which I have to point out. I actually ordered rabbit cages. They're on the way.
Oh, you're getting set up, huh?
Um, I'm finally getting set up. So there was this website or YouTube video I kept seeing, and it was I think Tealstone Rabbit Hutches or whatever. It was a girl's farm, and she made this channel, but she had a good setup, and so basically this is what I plan to do. Is it ended up being like a bunch of cages, um, a bunch of double cages, but no joke, all the rabbit cages to have I believe 8 separate cages. It's 2 giant ones connected, but to have
Hmm.
8 doors, it was something like $560 shipped. I was like, "Damn, that's a lot of money."
Hmm.
And but I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and you check that out because the girl does a great job putting it together and how to set it up and that kind of thing. She's also got videos on breeding and all that kind of stuff. So rabbits are awesome. Bigger farm animals are a little bit scarier step, but might be worth a look. Is something like sheep or cattle.
Yeah.
Um, that
Yeah. I have a friend
definitely
that
is more of a commitment.
I have a friend that raises chickens for meat chickens,
Mhm.
and he just started doing sheep. And the trick is you have to breed the sheep. You can't just buy a little sheep and then wait till it's full grown and slaughter it. You have to be making the sheep yourself.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, and the same thing really with the cattle, and I mean they have somebody come over and inseminate the
Hmm.
cattle, but and that's the thing, like, yeah, it can happen naturally, but again, that's a skill and people, and I think you and the wife might not be able to pull that off easily, breeding your own cattle, something
Hmm.
like that. It's something you really gotta get involved. Now, obviously, if you make a commitment, we can learn any skill, we can make things happen, but
Hmm.
that's going to be involved. um
Yeah. One thing I would recommend against is goats. Goats are great for milk and cheese and all sorts of different stuff. Um, but they're smart. You know what I mean? And butchering a goat, you have to make friends with it before it'll let you get close enough to do it, and then it just makes you feel like a terrible, terrible
all
person.
right, so if you have a soul,
Yeah.
then goats might be tough. um there's another thing that we haven't talked about a lot lately, and I probably should do an episode on this, but aquaponics.
Hmm. Right.
Aquaponics is pretty awesome. So it's like a whole circle of life where basically you have fish in the water. They produce nitrogen and crap like that. Um, and they contaminate and ammonia, and they contaminate the water. But then they cycle that through your the soil. You're basically using the dirty fish water to water your plants. That produces a ton of nitrogen and gets rid of the ammonia, and then the water can then basically be filtered and back into the fish, and
Right.
it creates a happy little symbiotic environment, which is kind of cool. And it it really gets huge yields, and you don't have to worry about like fertilizer and that kind of thing, because basically the fish are creating the fertilizer. Um, and obviously, you get the double benefit of having a continuous fish supply, as well
Hmm.
as having you
Right.
know,
Right.
plants
Now,
that are growing.
it
Yeah,
can be tricky to set it up though.
I
It
do
is
have.
it is
Yeah.
possible to kill everything all at once. You know what I mean?
Mm,
If one little mistake will wipe out the whole system, so you have to be very conscientious about how you're setting that up.
right. Well, I think that's why we do these episodes, because that's the thing, is this is something that you want to learn while you have the internet, and while you have access to YouTube, and you're not in a desperate situation where if you fail, things
Yeah, then you starve.
don't go horribly wrong. Right, exactly. We can say, "Oh, you know what? No problem. I can go get some lettuce from my neighbor, or I got the other garden still growing, or I don't need fish. I can go to the fish market or whatever." That kind of thing works out. Um,
Right.
I do have some resources for that. If anybody wanted to email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com, I'd be happy to send you a link for the aquaponic stuff. I actually have a pretty good guide to raising rabbits too, if you were interested. But so then the other option, we talked about is chickens. Now,
Hmm.
I am building a new chicken coop as we speak.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, it's so I got like a little graphic there. That's what we're looking at. It's pretty big. It's
nice.
like 8 by 10.
Yeah,
I set up nesting boxes in inside. Always in the past, I'd done nesting boxes that go outside the coop, and I end up getting rainwater and just crap. And I've always done like smaller ones where I'm like ducking under a roof and then
right.
lifting a hatch, and it's just been a pain in the ass. So this thing's like 8 foot tall and full on whatever. And I'm
Yeah,
gonna end up
cleaning out
yeah,
those chicken coops is never fun, but if you can actually have a chicken
moving
coop
it.
that you can actually stand up in and walk around in, it makes things a lot easier.
Right. Now, in the past, yeah, I've always had like, ridiculous little things that, don't work. And, that's the kind of thing that you get. But, hey, now I'm stepping up, moving into the big leagues.
Yeah,
And I
yeah. No,
think,
I've got my coop is built like Fort Knox. I've got all
yeah,
sorts of stuff trying to get in there. And be honestly, I had an issue, and I think I've finally solved it. Um,
what's that?
so we had an osprey that's been swooping down and getting my ducks.
All right.
You know, and you can't shoot them. It's a big fine to shoot any bird of prey in the United States. It's a you know just having a feather can get you into some serious trouble. Um, so I talked to the missus, and she used her voodoo witchcraft and got something figured out. So there's no predator. Ospreys have no predator, um, but the only thing that will fight the ospreys are crows. They'll gang up on them and chase them out. So she somehow used her witchcraft that I don't believe in. But now there is a murder of crows that live in the woods behind my house, and anytime that osprey comes by, they go after him. So I got to say, it's working.
No, that's right. So aquaponics. Now, another thought for food source would be bees.
Right,
Now,
right.
bees are again one of those kind of scary, like, I don't know, do I want to deal with that? The thing is, too, it's not that, oh, I'm afraid of bees or even afraid of bees, whatever, but it's also they're super easy to kill. Um,
Yeah,
you can,
yeah,
put a lot of effort and a lot of money and things go bad. Again, back to, these are the things you want to research beforehand. um,
hmm,
I do have a great book on that I would be happy to maybe put in the links and see if I can get you in the right direction on that. That's not a PDF. I can't send you that, but
right.
um, I can put a link in the show notes here. I'll see if I can get that worked out.
Yeah, we do have a podcast a while back all about
On
bees.
bees, yeah,
Yeah, but they are, like you said, they are really tricky. Like they're easy to kill. Especially if you live in a colder climate, you might have to get new bees every summer if you want to keep it going, because sometimes the cold just wipes them out. If you don't prep that hive really well,
yeah.
you're gonna have issues.
And that's what it comes down to is learning it all beforehand, before it's a stressful situation,
Right.
before things. Now, you were telling me in the Great Depression, everybody turned to hunting. How'd that play out?
Yeah, it didn't work out well. They said that if you talk to your great grandfather, you got a chance to talk to him before he turned 180 years old. You might have heard him tell stories about just seeing deer tracks was a novelty. You'd call the family over to come over and take a look at the deer tracks he found, because they're so sparse. There's so few of them. Everybody uh everybody turned to hunting when the grocery stores ran out of food and everybody lost their jobs and ran out of money. You still have to eat. And that was really a situation where people overhunted the whitetail uh, in the United States, and there was a serious decline in deer populations.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It is amazing how much change and how much effect, people don't realize when we're not going out and getting these things, that, you know, how the population changes. You always think, oh, I drive down the road and I can hit three with my car on the way home.
Yeah,
And then as soon as everybody starts turning to them, to eating deer, it's a big thing. The
right.
One of the guys mentioned mini goats
Hmm.
were an option, Daniel, and they also you might want to think about how tasty goats are.
They
Just
are
say.
personally, I that's my favorite.
I gotta
My
say, it
favorite
is
meat.
like the softer meat,
Uh-huh.
where you're like, ooh, that's kind of nice. It's
Yeah.
not like tough usually. It's not, a headache. Um, Also, obviously, trade and barter. Are you going
Hmm.
to have things that maybe other people could be doing the work for you,
Right.
right?
Right.
They could go out and put the effort in.
Yeah, if you have a big piece of property, goats are really easy to raise. If you have a smaller piece of property,
Exactly.
not so much. Not so much. They take care of themselves, but we're talking about 100 acres. Your 3 acre homestead might not have enough room for goats. You might have to like pen them in and supply the food for them. There's not going to be enough for them to eat just on their own there. Um, so it is something to think about. But I mean, that same thing goes for anything. Chickens, chickens are the same way. If you have a little quarter acre lot and you're raising chickens on them, you're going to be spending a lot of money on chicken feed.
Yeah,
If they have a
exactly.
bigger space to roam, it's not so expensive.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of guys in the comments, Slowbird and Brian, both worried about the hopper popper. I don't know if you
Hmm.
guys have seen. There's it's basically like a bent metal bar, and you basically just slide the rabbit right in. Slide his neck in there, and then fold it up, and it just breaks their necks. And
Ooh.
I gotta say, that sounds like the dream. I think they're like 30 or $40. I don't know. I haven't looked at it recently. I
Hmm.
kind of imagined I was gonna make something homemade to do that.
Uh-huh.
I'm too cheap to spend 30 or $40, but I think that's definitely the way is something
Yeah.
like that. I gotta look at it again and check it out.
Yeah.
I
You
haven't
can just bang them in the head with a hammer too. I mean, it's not
that's the other
it's not
way.
hard to kill them.
Well, I think
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean there's a lot of options as far as meat goes. The problem is there's a lot of people that are really interested in raising meat, but not so interested in actually butchering the meat, and that's the big difference. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's one thing to raise chickens for eggs and be happy with it, and you know just go with that. But at a um, certain point with some of the livestock, you gotta you got to take them out and you got to butcher them because anybody that hunts knows that cutting up an animal and harvesting the meat is not it's a skill. It's something that you have to practice at before you can really get everything. Chickens are easier, but when it comes to rabbits, when it comes to deer, those sorts of things, it's not something that's just intuitive you know
Right. Well, I mean, definitely, you need to check out like a good book on butchering and that kind of thing and have stuff on hand. And honestly, if you're thinking, oh, rabbits are going to be my go-to, I gotta say, if you think that you're just going to catch wild rabbits and put them in a pen and get them to breed,
yeah.
I believe it's possible. I'm told that they really don't do well when you bring them from the wild into captivity, that they just get all sad and lonely and die or whatever.
Hmm.
Whereas as opposed to if you can snatch up some babies, you might have better luck. But
Right.
again, there's tricks. I'm sure somebody who knows better. I've always been told it doesn't really work trying to do wild rabbits and then getting them to breed.
Right.
A lot of the prepper books, they have that playing out though. They're like, oh yeah, we just grabbed them, made a little fence, and everything's great and
Hmm.
whatever. I don't imagine that scenario playing out well, but who knows? Um, we I see that Darren from Mayhem Country Living. Checked out. Made it
Yep.
in today. I like
Hmm.
that. I don't know if you guys have checked out that YouTube channel, Mayhem Country Living. Freaking awesome. And Darren's been listening to the show and helping us out with ideas and different stuff for a long time. So, happy to have him. Um, Also, another thing you guys might want to look into is maple syrup or birch syrup, making
Right.
syrup from the trees.
Yeah.
That's definitely, a
And
go-to.
yeah, and the truth is you can get syrup from a lot of trees that aren't maple.
Right.
It just tastes worse, you know? But I mean, you can still do it. I luckily have a bunch of maple trees on my property here, so it's definitely something that I can get into. It's a lot of work, but it tastes pretty damn good when you get it right.
I gotta say, if you have a lot of maple trees or a lot of trees, there is a huge opportunity for making money. I gotta say, I read about a kid who was local to us when I was back in New York, and he was pulling in like 25 grand a year just by himself doing maple syrup and just setting it all up.
Hmm.
And
Right.
but again, it's hey, you got to take 2 weeks of school off, and you got to to
Right.
when you're the kid doing it, whatever, and it's a big deal to
Yeah,
you
it's
know
a lot. It's a lot of work.
because
Um,
once you start, you're committed. You're in there boiling, and yeah, it's work.
yeah, but any type of farm work is hard work. Even
Oh,
if it's just a vegetable garden, um, it can be a lot of labor. Um, we made I think we did 60 pounds of tomatoes last year, but you cook that down into making it tomato sauce or making salsa, and that 60 pounds doesn't turn into 60 pounds worth of food. So when it comes to preserving stuff like that, you have to be careful. I know a lot of people there's a lot of stuff that you can preserve easily yourself at home. um Hot peppers is one of my favorites. The uh um the uh have you ever had um pickled eggs? Have you ever eaten those? Disgusting. Disgusting, no
yep,
good. I've tried them before. It's not worth it. But when it comes to eggs and your own eggs, you've got to, 5 or 6 weeks. If you get, fresh eggs and not don't wash them and put them in the refrigerator, you got 5 or 6 weeks. You got easily 2 weeks just sitting on the counter. Those
right,
eggs will last for a while.
yeah,
Um, but in worst case situation, your refrigerator isn't going to be working. You know, so it's going
right,
to limit your time on that sort of stuff. But eggs are a great trade item. Great barter item. Especially if you have 5 or 6 chickens, that's going to be more than enough for what you would need as far
yeah.
as supplementing your diet. Um, Now let's talk about canned meat for a minute,
Tell
because
me about canned meat.
that is something you should be paying attention to if you're a prepper and you're looking to have some preserved food. So you've got chicken, tuna, spam, corned beef. Corned beef hash is one of my favorites, even though it's a lot of potatoes in there. And I guess there's canned oysters and clams. I don't know how that tastes, and I don't think I ever will because that sounds disgusting. But
Uh, you're missing
I'm not
out.
gonna buy it. It's not gonna be on my shelf. It's not
Yeah,
gonna be one of my pickup items when I go to the store to stick in the cabinet. Um, but you've got 2 to 5 years on canned meat like that, canned chicken, canned tuna. You got 2 to 5 years, but also you really have kind of forever. They'll last forever as long as the can is in good shape. It's not dented, it's not rusting. You keep those
right,
things in a you know relatively dry area up off the ground, and you've got a while with that canned meat. You've got years. Um, so that's definitely something that's worth stocking up on. I definitely buy canned vegetables and I buy canned meat, and I've got a good little stock up of those types of stuff. But when it comes down to it, that stuff goes a lot faster than you might think it will. You can run through that stuff pretty fast. So, um, you know, just something to keep in mind. I know a lot of people say spam. you know my feelings on Spam. Don't bother. Don't bother. It's gross. I always get hate mail about that. Spam is great. You just don't know how to cook it right. Whatever, dude. There's a lot of stuff that I'm sure I could cook it right and enjoy it more, but I ain't gonna find out. Um, yeah, are you familiar with the float test when it comes to eggs? A lot of people don't know about the float test. So you take your eggs and you stick them in a bowl of cold water. The eggs sink, it's fine. The eggs kind of float, stand up at the bottom, but float up. They're still fine. When they float to the top, don't even bother cracking that thing. Just throw it out. It's gonna stink up your whole damn house.
Oh, yeah, we do that. I I don't know. The big thing is to like have the rotation. They have the baskets, where you put your eggs in and kind of have it in a cycle. It's just like rotating your canned goods or all your other stores. You just kind of got to get into a system where you're really,
Right,
on
moving
top
through
of
your
paying
food.
attention.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. The other time where I think it's a risk is you'll get chickens that will lay eggs in random spots,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll
Right.
find 20 eggs and we're like, shit, what
How
do
will
you
you?
do
Right.
now?
How old
Right?
is this?
You got a pile of eggs and you're like, I hate to throw them all out, which honestly, usually if it's in a big production time of the year, like the middle of the summer where we're just getting way more eggs than we can handle, I'll just break them on
Right.
trees or whatever. I
Uh-huh.
know people will cook them up for their dogs or whatever. My dogs get plenty of eggs. There's no worry there. But
Right.
you know, you find a way. And obviously, depending on the animals you have, you can do things. You can feed your chickens like scrambled eggs. I know people be like shocked and horrified. The trick is you don't want to just break them and let your chickens eat them because they will actually start breaking eggs in your
And eating
coop
their
and
own
that kind
eggs.
of
Yeah.
thing. That's a big thing. I find it a little weird, whatever to feed your chickens eggs, but whatever. There is lime storage. I've
Yeah. I've never
never
tried that
tried
either.
it, but I've watched videos on that, and it basically like calcifies the outer shell. I
Mm-hmm.
believe it's just like lime and water, and they put like kind of dip it in, and then that works out. Yeah, obviously if you had like pigs, that kind of thing, which pigs we didn't mention. Pigs would be
Mm-hmm.
great. That's also something I keep thinking about braving.
Yeah. Well, it's the
And
same thing. The pigs and the goats. It's the same thing to me. You know what I mean? Pigs are great. They fatten up fast. They'll eat anything. But it's also the same thing. Killing a pig is not like a pleasant chore. I will smash a rabbit's head in. I will wring a neck of a
Kevin,
chicken, no problem. But I
but what
feel bad
about
when you see the pigs.
when they're
They're
cute
friendly.
and furry and you see
Uh
them
huh.
shaking the little bunnies all
Yeah.
sad?
No, I
No,
have
you don't
no
care?
feelings for them. Pigs, though. I mean, I love bacon. I eat ham, but I ain't butchering it myself.
We
That's
leave
just
that to the pig guy, huh?
yeah, yeah. I have the same friend that raises the chickens, raised a pig, and turns out the pig now lives in the house with him.
Yeah, you're making
So
room in the bed for the pig, right?
yeah, it didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I
I
mean
mean they're
that's it.
cute,
There are a lot of animals that'll kind of eat anything and just be,
right?
good to go with any of your scraps. So that's the thing is to find the trick where you're completely, utilizing every aspect of it. You learn the tricks that there's no waste and
Hmm.
you move along. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, um, another thing, like as preppers, another go-to that you always hear about. I mean, this used to be the staple of prepping. It's funny. I feel like we've all kind of got away from it. Is long-term food storage, right? I
Right.
mean, just having a supplied pantry and being on top of stuff, especially if you can do the grains and the stuff, but it's so hard to sustain it. Actually, that was one of the things Darren from Mayhem Country Living had pointed out was you can freeze your stuff like your rice and your stuff like that you're buying, maybe bags at Sam's Club or whatever. That's pretty much how I do it. And if you freeze it for like 3 days before you pack it, then you'll get a lot more life as far as, insects or anything
Right.
like that kind of ending up growing and whatever. Uh, you know, that's something you want to look at. I actually have
Yeah,
a
same
big
goes for
freezer,
pasta and yeah,
right?
all that type of starch stuff that you might save long term.
Right. And because I don't have I didn't get a deer this year because I was slow getting out and whatever. Turns out my freezer's empty, so now it's just full of rice. So,
All right, there you
hey,
go.
teach their own. At least I have the space, all right? Don't judge me. That and a bunch of store-bought sausage I think it's like Bass or something, sausage for my breakfast. But aside of that,
That's it in there right now, huh? All right. Now, we talked about rabbits. We talked about bees. We talked about aquaponics.
yep.
Let's talk about goats a little bit more.
Okay.
Um, Now, goats are a really smart animal. They'll eat just about anything that they'll eat poison ivy. They'll eat just about anything that grows on leaves and turn it into milk. And I don't know if you've ever tried goat milk before, but it's fantastic. It's great. Um, Goat milk and goat cheese, some of my favorite stuff. Some people just won't eat it. Just they don't even want to try it, but you gotta try those things out, man. Be surprised. Same thing with like duck eggs, different types of eggs. A lot of people not interested in it. They're not going to eat turkey eggs. They only want chicken eggs. But
Yeah.
you're used to eating one type of egg, and yeah, it tastes a little bit different. Everybody says, oh, they're all the same. They're not all exactly the same. They're a little bit
No.
different. But I mean, it's different isn't bad. Sometimes change is good.
Right. Yeah, my buddy was always pushing his duck eggs on me, and I'm like, I don't want your crappy duck eggs. I don't know what
Uh huh.
you're doing. You
I
know,
I
it,
get a lot of duck eggs, and anytime I ever give them to somebody, they're like, "Oh, I'll try one or two, but don't give me a dozen. I'm not going to eat all of them." All right, whatever.
yeah.
Different strokes, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and quail
Now
is
in the
it's another good one.
yeah,
Yep.
quail, I gotta say, I always was excited. Like I have a big yard. I know there's some fox back there that I haven't gotten rid of. And early on, one fox was a problem for my chickens, and I took care of him. And his girlfriend's still hanging out there. So far, hasn't gotten into my chickens. He's
Hmm.
always getting my neighbor's chickens, but I always see him on the trail cam moving through my yard. And
Hmm.
they're like, "Why aren't you getting them?" And I'm like, "Because he hasn't been a problem." And it's not that. It's this guy will show up on the trail cam at 2 in the morning on a Thursday, and then the next week on Tuesday he might show up at
Right.
3 in the afternoon. And I'm like, dude,
He's
I'm not
not
going to just sit there forever when he's not freaking,
right.
he's
He's
not
not
on
coming
the
through every.
regular routine.
Yeah, especially if he's not eating your chickens. It's not too big of a problem.
Right. I don't
But
want to get home at 10:30 at night and then, oh, gotta go hit the stand.
yeah.
Like I do, and maybe that's why I didn't get the deer this year. That
Hmm.
could be something to it.
Yeah.
But
Not going out and looking for
yeah,
deer.
it turns out you gotta do stuff.
You
Um,
actually have to hunt to get anything from hunting.
but actually what got me on the fox was, you'd mentioned quail, but there is a lot of game birds that reproduce like freaking crazy.
Hmm.
A lot of the ones I was looking at, I look at that Murray McMurray hatchery. It's where I get my chickens. They
Hmm.
do packages of the game birds, and if I remember right, they're like 250 to $400. They're no, but it's a lot.
Right.
But they reproduce ridiculously quick. It's like 20 or 30 babies every 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, it's like insane the
That's a
volume
lot.
you
Yeah.
get from the game birds. So you could really fill your woods if you had like I do. I have like a bunch of acres, and I say a bunch. It's all relative. If you live in town on a quarter acre lot, my 14 acres is a lot,
Right.
but to a lot of farmers, 14 acres is a joke. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have
That
any
ain't shit.
land. You're not a farmer. So, it's
Hmm.
all relative. It's where you're standing, right? But letting those guys go in my woods, they're honestly pretty sustainable, even with a fox and predators out there, because they're reproducing so fast. So an investment like that, it could really help. The wife and I are kind of back and forth on that because we're not sure of how much damage they'll do to other things.
Right.
As far as
Right.
eating crops and things like that, or berries. We have a lot of wild grapes and things like that going. It's how much do you want to, it's a trade off. It's how much do you like meat over vegetables? So obviously, I'm in favor of the meat, and she's in favor the other way. So,
Yeah.
uh, another thing Brian had pointed out: bees equal mead,
That's
and
right.
having both sugar and, as we point out, alcohol, that's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you something between you and me and everybody listening. I think mead tastes like shit. Not a fan. But I mean, it's better than no alcohol, you know? I'll take
Yeah.
beer any day over mead, but, you know,
I don't know. Up by you, I think you have some kind of Renaissance fair that you got to go get your mead once a year and cash in on stuff. I
yeah.
haven't ever tried to make it. I haven't really got into it. I do know there is a bunch of hives within a quarter mile of me. Um, like I said, the wife and I keep talking about it. It's probably a couple years out. You saw how long it took me to commit to rabbits. I was
Yeah. You've been
excited
talking about that for a while.
for probably at least 2 years. Thing
Hmm.
is, $600 is a big freaking nut. Plus, it's work. It's
Right.
a
It's a lot of
big.
work.
I got to go out and I mean, it's just one more thing. I got to
Hmm.
put together all these cages. I got to set it up. I got to go out there. I got to put them together and breed them, and it's stuff. Now, I understand. You're like, oh, well, if you work a farm, that's just part of it, and whatever. And farms are hard work, and that's great. But I also work a full time job where I work 60 hours a week, and it's
Hmm.
like, all
Right.
right, I got a lot going on,
Right.
and so
Well, I
that's
mean,
just something to think about.
yeah, I mean, that's ultimately the issue with any type of farming, whether it's a vegetable garden or you're raising animals, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to keep that going. And you could spend you could spend 10 hours a day working on your vegetable garden and save $15 a week in vegetables, I mean, it's a give and take, you have to know what you're doing and make things as easy as possible for yourself, and then everything else will kind of work its way in there.
Yeah, no, exactly. You got to figure out what works for you, and that's like, I mean, I understand like the meat is like it's kind of like beer, right? Um,
Yeah, it's a little
I
sweeter.
I used to make beer a lot, and it's a lot of work. Like the big thing was just washing the bottles, and because you got to
Right.
get rid
Yeah,
of
yeah.
any kind of yeast, or you're
Right.
going to get funky tastes, right? So
Right.
you just want the yeast that you want. But the problem is, you clean everything out with bleach. Well, you got to make sure you got rid of all that yeast, or sorry, all that bleach, because you might kill your good yeast.
Yeah, the
So
yeast you
I
want.
use like 50 gallons because I'm paranoid, washing all the bottles, 50
Uh-huh.
gallons of water. And it's a fair amount of steps, and you got to go back and check it and switch it. It's not like, all right, today's the day I'm going to make beer. Well, it's I need today, and I need in 2 weeks, and I need in a week after that, and
Right.
I'm going to do it all. And sometimes it would be like really good, like, hands down, it'd put like Sam Adams or something like that to shame, where you're like, oh, this is really good.
Right.
And the craft beers or something. But then other times I'll make it and I'll be like, yeah, it's kind of like Bud Light.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. You'd
Right.
be like, yeah, it's I could do without that.
Yeah. It
And
takes a lot of work and a lot
you
of
just don't
practice
want
to
to
get good
put
at it.
that kind of effort and then end up with crap. No, I would
Yeah.
say most of the time, I've gotten to the point where my fails are like, all right, it's like Sam Adams. It's okay.
Right.
But I want it to be better, because I already paid, to make a case of beer, what, like 28 beers or something. It's going to cost me like $20. And I'm like, yeah, I could buy Sam Adams for $20 and,
Yeah. Yeah.
or,
Without all the
40,
work.
whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, just something to think about.
Yeah. It's definitely yeah, it's definitely a tricky thing. It's a balancing act, you know what I mean? As far as the money you're investing and the return you get, a lot of the time, some of this Farm stuff is not really financially, you know, that much for your labor. But it is something to have in your back pocket. It's a skill that's valuable, and over time you can get better at it. You make mistakes and you make mistakes and you make mistakes and then you get it right. And turns out it's all worthwhile at the end. Um, there's something satisfying about eating your own eggs and drinking your own beer and that sort of stuff. It's same thing with hunting, you know. Satisfying that you got it yourself and you did it yourself and you did all the work yourself. I mean,
It
it is
is.
worthwhile
And
when you
like
don't.
all your buddies are like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing." And I mean, that is cool, but
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. All right.
it's just effort. So, like I said, a lot to think about. The idea is really what we were getting at with this is you really need to start to step up your self-sufficient game. You need to figure out how to completely sustain your own stuff. Um, we've been talking a lot lately about inflation and the economy and things going on. It sure looks like, war with China kind of would, I don't even know what that means. It could be like, oh, yeah, you guys have Taiwan. We don't really care. But our
Right.
government will throw a bunch of money at crap. Or
Right.
it could be something even worse where China's messing with us with cyber warfare kind of thing of, hacking our power grid or who knows, right?
Yeah, it's definitely something that they're interested in.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, war and it's going to be bad because it could be, but it probably won't be. It's one of those things, the world, nothing ever changes, is kind of how it really feels.
Right.
And when we fight our wars as Americans, it's always kind of far away and removed. China definitely could step it up and change that. We could be like Russia. Did you see over the weekend? Or over the week they bombed one of their own cities? Did you see
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that explosion. I don't know what kind of bomb that was, but it looked like a bunker buster the way it
Yeah.
went down.
I
Seemed like it went under the ground and then blew everything up.
That's crazy, right? How
Yeah.
powerful everything is. It's amazing. But I got to say that's something you might want to that's something America would do. We'd
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, we're on our way to China. Wait, Cleveland. Let me drop it here."
Yeah.
That's our kind of play. So, I'm just saying you might want to learn to take care of yourself a little bit cuz the government might be distracted with their own nonsense and not as able to help you. And honestly, something like you yeah, Venezuela, something like that where inflation kind of gets out of hand and you got to take care of yourself. Having all these self-sufficient ways to feed your family and things that you can implement easily, being prepared, having the supplies you need really could be the game changer. And as you know, like if you have something like, oh, we're breeding chickens and we're doing really well on a large scale, you could be trading meat chickens as a barter item if you had, that kind of volume. Same thing. I mean, that's why rabbits excite me is, man, I could take care of everybody in my neighborhood with rabbits and
Hmm.
I could even set them up breeding their own. People are a whole lot less likely to come steal from you when you're sharing lots of rabbits or setting them up to breed their own. Hey, I
Right.
can give you a breeding pair and you can be good to go. That's the kind of beauty of it.
Hmm.
But learning the different tricks, again, like hunting, you can really step up your volume with that and be pretty cool and sustainable. But it's something you have to learn and figure out. Same thing, aquaponics. People are like, well, I don't want to eat fish every day. And you can really set up a system where you could have fish every day, but
Hmm.
you could also trade fish with the guy who's growing rabbits next door.
Right.
And that's the whole thing is kind of talking to your neighbors. Hey, I can't take on everything in the world, but if I take on rabbits, you could take on chickens and the other guy can do pigs and you can kind of work out a system where you all kind of work together.
Right.
And that's awesome is being sustainable and having it. So I appreciate all you guys in the chat, hanging out and lots of comments. I appreciate you showing up here every day. So It would be great if you like and subscribe to the channel. It always helps. We're trying to kind of grow it into something. YouTube hasn't been our thing. Faithful guys in the podcast who are there consistent every week, downloading every time. I love it. Any kind of reviews you can leave anywhere, likes, that kind of thing. We appreciate it. And I would say with that, stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.